welcome to my channel. My name is Tim Tokwe. If this is your first time here, thank you for stopping by. And if you're a returning subscriber, thank you for checking in again. So today we are going to be making this beautiful dress. So if this is what you're interested in knowing how to make, so you want to continue watching this video. So do not forget to like, to comment, and also subscribe to this channel. You also want to turn on your notification bell so that you'll be the first to get notified each time I upload a new video. So let's go straight into the tutorial. So I'll be using this Ankara for this dress, and I'll also be using tulle and doll face. So I have 11.5 yards of tulle, and I also have 3 yards of doll face. So this is the starting line. So I'm going to be marking the bust point, the under bust, the waistline, and also the shoulder to hip measurement. Then after the shoulder to hip measurement, I'm going to be marking 5 inches after that. So this is going to serve as the length of the upper part of the dress before we attach the tulle. So I'm going to be connecting a straight line across each of these points. So this is the hip line and this is the length line. So I'm going to go ahead and label everything. So this is the waistline, the hip, and the length. So I'm going to be taking on the starting line, I'm going to be taking the neck measurement. So I'm going to be using 3.5 by 3.5. This is like the basic neck measurement, but because my client is a bit on the big side, so I'm using 3.5 instead of 3 inches. So you can go ahead to use 3 inches if you're on the small size. So on the shoulder line, on the starting line, I'm also going to be marking my shoulder. So I'm going to be dividing the shoulder by 2, and that's 7.5. Then I'm going to come down by 1 inch and then connect it to the neckline. Then from the shoulder, I'm going to be taking my armhole depth. So I'm going to be dividing my bust measurements by 6, and then I'm going to add 1.5 inches to get my armhole depth. So this is going to give me 8.5 inches. So I'm going to mark that, and this will serve as my chest line. So I'm going to draw a straight line across this, and I'm going to label it as my chest line. Then I'm going to be connecting from the shoulder to that chest line, and this is my armhole depth. So I'm going to be locating the middle of this armhole depth, then I'm going to mark it. Then on my chest line, I'm going to be dividing my bust measurement into 4. So I'm going to mark it here. My bust measurement is 43, so I'm going to divide that into 4. Then on this shoulder line, I want to reduce the shoulder line. This is because the style is sleeveless, and I don't want the shoulder to be so wide. So I'm going to come in by 3/4 of an inch. I'm going to be reducing it by 3/4 of an inch. So this will be the new shoulder line. So on this center line, the middle of the armhole depth, so I'm going to be coming by 1/2 of an inch too. So I'm going to be connecting these 3 lines together. So I'm going to be marking this out so that we don't get confused. So on my waistline, I'm going to be taking my dart measurement. So I'm going to be using 1/2 of my nipple to nipple measurement. So the nipple to nipple measurement is 8 inches, so 1/2 of it is 4 inches. So I'm going to mark that also on the bust point. So I'm going to connect this with a straight line. Then on the waistline, I'm going to be taking 1/2 of an inch on both sides of the dart line. Then I'm going to be connecting it towards the bust point. Then from that bust point, I'm going to be connecting it to the armhole. So I'm going to be connecting to 1/2 of the armhole, that is the middle point of the armhole. So I'm just going to connect it like this, and you can see I'm not connecting it directly from the bust point. I went down a bit because I don't want it to have a sharp angle. So now this lower part, I'm not going to be putting that there. This is because it's going to be in form of A shape, like a slight A shape. So it does not have to have a dart. So I'm going to go ahead now and take my other horizontal measurements. I already took my bust measurement, so now I'm going to be taking the under bust measurements. So the under bust, I'm going to divide it by 4. I'm going to mark it. Then I'm going to measure the dart allowance there, and then I'll be placing it back. Then on the waistline, I'm also going to be dividing my waist measurement into 4. My waist measurement is 38, divided by 4, I have 9.5. So I'm going to be marking out the dart allowance also, and I'll be placing it back. So on the hip line, I'm going to be dividing the hip measurements by 4. That is 11. But I'm going to be adding 1/4 of an inch to this because I don't want the hip to be so tight. So what I measured on the hip, I'm going to be measuring that on the length line also. Then I'm going to be adding 1/2 of an inch to it. So that means I'm going to be marking 11 3/4 on the length line. So I'm going to be connecting all this together. So now I'm going to be cutting them out. So before cutting out the dashed line, I'm going to be placing the front pattern on the back pattern so that I can mark out the points. I don't want to start marking this out again with my tape. So I'll just draw a straight line across each point. So this will make it easier for me. So I'm just going to mark the line now. So this is the chest line, this is the bust point, this is the waistline, the under bust, the waistline, and this is the hip line. Then this is the L, which is the length line. So now I'm going to go ahead and label it. Then the first thing I'm going to do on the waistline, I'm going to be coming in by 3/4 of an inch. This is to eliminate the zip bulge. And I'm going to be drawing it upward there. And I'm also going to be drawing another line from that waistline downward like this, just to eliminate the zip bulge. Now I'm going to be marking out my zipper allowance. So I'm using 1.5 inches here. So why I'm using 1.5 is this already includes the seam allowance. So by the time I stitch it, I'll be left with 1 inch. So I'm at the zipper allowance. The actual zipper allowance is 1 inch. So I'm going to be cancelling this place out. So on the starting line, I'm going to be taking the neck measurement, just like we did for the front. I used 3.5 there. But instead of coming down by 3.5, I'm going to be coming down by 1 inch because this is the back pattern. So the back neckline is going to be shorter than this. It's not going to be as deep as the front part. So now I'm going to be taking the shoulder measurement. So I'll divide the shoulder measurements by 2. Then from that point, I'm going to come down by 1 inch and then connect it towards the neckline. Then I'm going to connect from that shoulder to the chest line, because we already have the chest line there. So now I'm going to be dividing my bust measurements by 4, and I'll be marking it on the chest line. So now I'm going to locate the middle of the armhole depth. I'm going to mark it, and then I'm going to come in by 1/2 inch. Then on the shoulder, remember that the front part we come in by 3/4 of an inch. We reduce by 3/4 of an inch. So I'm doing the same thing here, and then I'm going to be connecting the 3 lines. I'll also be marking that out. Then on the waistline, I'm going to be taking the dart measurement. So I divide my nipple to nipple measurement by 2 to take the dart measurement. So I want to take exactly what I have there on this part. So that's why I'm marking it from the starting point, so that I'll get a straight line. Then on the line, I'm going to be taking 1/2 inch on both sides on the waistline. So I'm going to be connecting it towards the bust point, just like this. So I'm going to be connecting it to the middle of the armhole. So on the under bust line, I'm going to be taking the under bust measurement. I'll divide the under bust by 4. I'll mark it. Then I'm going to measure the dart allowance, and I'll also be placing it back. Then on the waistline also, I'm going to divide the waist measurement by 4, mark it, measure the dart allowance and place it back. So you can note that my tape, I'm putting it after the zipper allowance. So now I'm taking the hip measurement also. I'll divide that into 4 and mark it. Then I'll add 1/4 inch, just like I added to the front part. And what I have on my hip measurement, I'm going to be marking it here, and then I'll add 1/2 inch to it. So now I'm going to be connecting all the lines together. Then I'm going to be cutting them out. So now I'm going to be cutting out the waistline. And this is the front part. I'll be cutting out the waistline also. So I'm going to be dividing it into 2. So now we are going to be working on this lower part. So in between the hip line and the L line, the length line, that's where we are going to be having our semicircles, the curves where our tool is going to be pleated on. So now we want to have 2 semicircles on this line. So what we are going to be doing is, this line from the starting point here, we are going to be marking 1 inch. We are going to be using a pencil. So I'm going to mark it with a long stroke. And then on the end line there too, on the end part, I'm also going to mark 1 inch. And I'll mark it with a long stroke. Now what we are going to do is, in between these 2 lines, we are going to locate the center, the middle. So this is 9.5. So the middle is going to be 4 and 3/4. So I'm just going to mark that there. Now this, I'm not going to use this as a long stroke. I'm going to use a short stroke. So on this point now, I'm going to be taking 1/2 inch on both sides. So this 1/2 inch, I'm going to be marking them with a long stroke. So the idea is to have 1 inch at the beginning another 1 inch at the center, and 1 inch at the end. So we have 3 1 inches there like that. So in between these 1 inches is where we are going to be having our semicircles. So we are going to be connecting our semicircle from from the beginning of this 1 inch to the next one, and then the other one also like that. So we are going to have 2 semicircles that way. So now to get the semicircles accurately, we are going to be looking for the middle of this part where we are going to be drawing our semicircle. So here we have 4 1/4. So I'm going to locate the middle, which is 2 and 1 stroke. So now I'm going to be measuring it from the beginning here. So I have 3 and 1 stroke. So I'm going to mark it here so that I can get a straight line. So I have 3 and 1 stroke there. So I'm going to connect it. On the second part too, I'm going to locate the middle also. So I'm going to be measuring it. I also have 4 1/4 there. And so that means in between will be 2 and 1 stroke. So I'm going to be marking this from the beginning here so that I can get a straight line. So I have I'm going to be measuring what I have there here also. So now I'm going to connect it with a straight line. So now I have the center of my 2 semicircles. So I'm not going to connect the semicircle to the hip line. I'm going to come down by 1/2 of an inch from the hip line. And then I'm going to be marking it there. So that's where my semicircle is going to stop. So I'm going to curve it all the way up and then down towards the side. And the second part also. So I'm going to be using my curve rule for this. I'm going to connect it to the center this way. Then I'm going to turn it to the other side and also connect it to the next line. So if you mark the line where you will not mix it up at all. So now I'm going to be smoothing this part here because I don't want that edge to be sharp, so I want it to be curvy. Then I'm going to be connecting the second one. So you can see that it's very easy. You're just going to place your curve like this and then connect to the center there. Then place it to the other side also and then connect to make this one. Then you're just going to smoothen the center so that you don't have a sharp edge there. So you find a way to smoothen it so that you can have a curve. So now I'm going to be placing this on my back pattern. I'll be pinning it together and then I'm going to be cutting them out. So you can see that I'm not placing it on the zipper allowance. So you have to place it correctly. Then you pin it together and then I'm going to be cutting them together. So now I've cut out this pattern on the fabric. So you can see on the side I have 2 inches same allowance there, and then I added 1/2 inches all around. So the same thing to the back part. I did not add any allowance on the zipper part because I already had the allowance, and then I had 2 inches on this side. So this is the center front, so I added 1/2 inch all around, but on this side I have 2 inches, and then I've gone ahead to cut my lining also. This is the back part, the same thing. I added 1/2 inch all around and then 2 inches on this side. But on the center part, I did not add any allowance. So I'm going to be cutting this together. I'm going to be placing it like this, and I'm going to be stitching it from the lower part upward to the armhole area. So I already did that. I'm going to be placing my lining on it, and then I'm going to be stitching the neck part first. Then I'm going to be notching it all around and then top stitch on it. So now I'm going to be joining the armhole area and also the side. This is the back part. I'm going to be closing that area too, joining it from the lower part towards the armhole. Then I'm going to be joining it together with the lining. So there's going to be a difference between the back and the front. See, I'm going to stitch the neck, the zipper area, and the side, but I'm not going to stitch the armhole. Note that the front part I stitched the armhole, but the back part I'm not going to be stitching the armhole. So I'm going to be using the armhole for the back part to turn the shoulder, and then I'm going to be joining it together while joining the shoulder. So just watch what I'm going to be doing. You're just going to be joining this like the way you join your shoulder whenever you are fixing your regular dress. So you can see the way I'm doing it. It's just the regular way we join the shoulder. But the only difference here is that we are going to be closing the armhole for the back along with the shoulder. So I'm going to pin this together so that it can stay in place. And then I'm going to be putting the rest inside the armhole. You can see what I'm doing. So when I put the rest inside the armhole, then it will be easy for me to stitch on the armhole for the back side. and then I'm going to be bringing it out from the waistline. The waistline is still open. I'm going to bring it, and I'm going to be doing the same thing to the other side too. So this is what we have. You can see that we have both our armhole closed, and I've top stitched on the waistline here. So now I'm going to be closing the zipper area for the back side. So I'm going to be pinning by 1 inch. So now I'm going to be stitching them together. So I've pinned it together. I'm going to be taking my bust measurement. So my bust measurement divided by 4, and then I'm going to mark what I have left. Then I'll be dividing that into 2, and I'll be taking that on both sides. So I'm going to be taking my under bust measurement so that I can know exactly where my under bust is. Then I'm going to be dividing it into 2. Then I'm going to mark what I have. Then I'm going to measure what I have left, divide that into 2, and then what I have, I'm going to be taking it on both sides. So I'm going to be saying thing to the waistline. I'll divide the waist measurement into 2. Then I'm going to mark what I have. Then what I have left, I will measure it, divide it into 2, and take what I have on both sides. So now I'm going to be connecting them with a curve. So this is the lower part of the front part. So I'm going to be stitching this together also. And I'm also going to be stitching around the curve, the semicircles. This is so that I don't have to interlock it. So after stitching, I'm going to be notching it. So you can see I already top stitch on the waistline and the lower part also. So this is the back side, this is the zipper area. So I'm also going to be pinning the zipper area by 1 inch all the way down. Then I'm going to be placing the front part on it. Then I'm going to be shaping it on the side. So I'm going to be taking my waist measurement. My waist measurement divided by 2. Then I'm going to mark what I have there and then measure it. Then I'm going to be dividing it into 2 also. I'll be taking it on both sides. Also, I'm going to divide my hip measurements by 2. Then I'm going to add half of an inch. Remember that when we were cutting, we had 1/4 of an inch. That was because we were folding into 4. But yeah, it's into 2. So I'm going to add half of an inch. Then I'm going to mark what I have left. I have 3 inches there. I'm going to divide it into 2. So I'm going to be taking 1.5 inch on both sides. So what I took on the hip side as the allowance is what I'm going to be taking at the length side also, at the end part here. So just like you see me do. So now I'm going to be connecting these 3 lines together. And then I'm going to be stitching it. So I already stitched it. Now I'm going to be joining it to the upper part. So I already joined it, and now I'm going to be fixing the zip. So what I'm going to be doing is to measure 21 inches. This is how long I want my zip to be. So my zip is actually longer than that, but that's where I want it to stop. So the remaining parts, I'm going to stitch it by 1 inch. So now I'm going to stitch this lower part by 1 inch and be fixing my zipper on the upper part. So I have the tool there. So what I'm going to do is to take the end part of the tool. You can see what I'm doing. So that end part, I'm bringing the two together because I want it to be doubled. I want to double the two so that it's going to be very full. So the length I have after doubling it, now I have about 32 inches or so. So now I'm going to bring it together like this and then be pleating it on the lower part of the dress. So I'm going to start from the back part where I have the joining at the back part. So I'm going to be pleating it like this. I'm going to be holding the two together and be pleating it together like that. And I'm going to make sure that it is very deep, like I pleat it very deep so that it can be full and it will not be so transparent. So you can see this is what I'm doing on the machine. I'm starting from that part and I keep pleating it towards the curve. So when I get to the junction there, like that pointed part, what I'm going to do is to make sure that I make a V shape at that angle. So I'm going to stop my footer, raise it up, then turn it over just to make a V shape. And then I'll keep pleating. You can see how deep I'm pleating it. So if you don't pleat it very deep like this, it's not going to be fine. It's not going to be full. So you have to pleat it deep so that it can be full and it's going to look nice. So you can see that I'm getting towards the end of the dress already. It's almost getting to the starting point where I started fixing my tool. So now I don't have enough tool like when I was pleating. So now I reduce the how deep I'm pleating it so that it can circulate, because I want it to overlap the previous one where I started from. I don't want to join it, so I'm going to keep stitching such that it will overlap it. So you can see that I'm already stitching on the previous one. That's because I don't want to join it. So this way you will not know the starting point and the end. When I'm done, I'm going to measure from my shoulder to my gownlet and then trim off the rest so the down can be straight. You can see how beautiful it looks, and this is the back part. You can see that you cannot even see the starting point or the end part, so that is the beauty of it being full. So now this is my doll face. I've already marked 24 inches length. So how I got this length is I measured the length of my tool and then I subtracted 4 inches from it. So you can try to subtract 2 inches from yours. So now the wideness of this is 150 inches. So I'm going to be pleating this all over this lower part of the dress. So the way I'm going to be pleating this, I'm going to be pleating it from the wrong side. It's not going to be from the right side like I pleated it too. So I'm going to place it in such a way that it's going to be covering the pleating of the tulle up. So you can see this is what it's going to look like by the time I'm done. So I'll just make sure, but I'm not going to pleat it as deep as I pleated it too, because this is not as much as it too. So I'm going to make it a bit scanty. So this is what it looks like after pleating it. So now I'm going to be trimming the lower part so that I can have a straight part. So that's what I'm doing here. So I'm just trimming it so that the lower part can be straight. So now I'm going to be pleating the lower part there because I don't want it to start threading. So I'm going to double stitch it there. So this is the end look of our dress. Thank you for watching. Do not forget to like and subscribe to this channel. See you in my next video.